welcome back to Father of Two Plays Pillars of Eternity, Blind. Last time we were exploring Woodend Plains, and we're just about finished with that before we head to the city of Defiance Bay.
Alright then.
Now, we found a little farmhouse just at the end of the last episode. And we're gonna check it out. There doesn't seem to be much going on.
Hey.
Couple of graves there. A sparrow's nest is tucked between two angled slats. Well, not much left to explore on this map. We'll just make sure we clear out this little area. Not that I think there's anything in there. Oh, but there is. Ah, another Puagra. Let's mark it. Actually, let's wound it. No, let's mark it first. Now, let's wounding shot it. And try and knock it prone. Nice. I think it's healing. No, it casts some type of lightning magic.
Attend to the priest.
Is he down? He is. Well. Oh, is this? Oh, it's a frickin'... Here I think it's, my bad. I thought it was just a spell, but it's actually an enemy. Not a super tough one, but... My bad. So I didn't think there'd be anything in there. There was something in there. Fair enough.
Hey.
Well, let's head... I guess... Should we check what's south? And make sure... Come on. Make sure we see whatever's connected this way. I can't remember if we did or not, so... We will do that. We're getting pretty close to the point where we need to rest. Searing Falls. Yeah, okay. Good stuff. I'm glad I checked that out. But we're going here. We'll take 4 hours to complete your journey from Woodend Plains to Adelwan Bridge. So, we're on our way to Defiance Bay for the first time. We'll see what awaits us here. Okay, this map is fully revealed. A couple of adventurers. Astrond Myriamelis. As you near, you feel a vibrant history contained in the essence of this woman's soul. Voices from its past seem to call out to you. Reach out for the soul. You see a lavishly decorated room, walls hung with tapestries, ornate oil lamps creating a warm, relaxing atmosphere. There are several overstuffed couches covered with silk pillows and an elegant table in the middle of the floor. The woman is seated at the table, sitting across from another woman. They are both well-dressed, their style befitting the room they're in. The other woman's hair is blonde in stark contrast to this woman's black and is swept up on her head in a dramatic style. The women speak in an easy, free tone, obviously familiar with one another. Though they each seem to be comfortable in the other's company, a strange nervousness surrounds the blonde woman's actions. She occasionally betrays herself with a little giggle or stammer, hitching over an easy word as she speaks. Her demeanor swings from friendly to shy and back again with no warning. This woman leans back a little in her chair, stretching lightly as she finishes her stretch. She gently lays her hand next to the other woman's hand, letting their fingers subtly intertwine. The second woman stops speaking mid-sentence, inhales sharply, and turns red. She does not, however, move her hand. This woman smiles and moves her hand further over the other, holding it. Then she stands, moving around the table toward the blonde woman, whose face shows conflicting emotions of terror and lust. She giggles and pulls her hand out from under the other and brings it to her mouth, the red of her face deepening. This woman stops, looking down at her, eyes sparkling. She reaches out and pulls something from the blonde's hair, letting it fall around her shoulders. Then she leans over, brushing her lips lightly over the blonde woman's cheek, resting her mouth against her ear. As she whispers, her hands move lithely down the other woman's body to her waist. The blonde shudders and leans into the hand, eyes closing, cheek pressing against the woman's belt. Against the lips still whispering at her ear. This woman's hand deftly removes a small bag from the other woman's belt and secretes it under her own cloak at the small of her back. Then she gently kisses the other woman's cheek and stands again, the smile never leaving her mouth. A pickpocket. And a seductress. Craddock Bridgman. As you near, you feel a vibrant history contained in the essence of this man's soul. Voices from its past seem to call out to you. You see a ship being tossed about in a storm-ravaged sea. The swells rise and fall, carrying the ship with them as if it were a toy. This man stands on deck at the helm of the ship, while water whips around him. The crew moves about frantically, trying to keep the chaos under control. He barks orders at them, pointing where to go and giving each one a task. The men, while still visibly distressed, seem to calm when they are given their orders. A ship's captain. He instructs the helmsman to resume his duties at the wheel and rushes to the aid of a crewman who is struggling with a rope attached to one of the sails. The ship crests a wave, almost going vertical in one direction and then immediately again in the other direction. Several of the crew are thrown from their feet, sliding across the deck as the ship rocks. After the swell passes and the ship returns to a relatively normal orientation, the man quickly scans the deck, counting silently. No one has been lost this time, thankfully. He looks in the direction they're headed, seeing no reprieve from the storm in sight. His jaw squared and his upper lip stiffened. He returns to the helm and takes the wheel again.
Hey.
Commoners, okay. Another one. Zoran Zenius Kavik. You see a flurry of matted white hair and an incandescent freeze-fire staff before you see the man, cold and wild. He chews a wizened apple slowly, discharging spell after spell into the jumble of villagers screeching their way towards him. Cold flame vents from his nose, and apple seeds shoot out of the side of his mouth as he saunters forward, ignoring arrows and curses alike. A deliberate twist of his staff and a bullet of force glides through the torso of one assailant and another. A roar blisters his throat as he launches himself into their midst, tearing into their essence with his staff. A pleading hand reaches towards him and quickly falls, ignored. Silence takes his hold as the tattered man gathers his prize, a basket of fresh pears. He hums as he eats them. Wow, that guy killed a bunch of villagers just to eat their food? Steal their pears? That seems harsh. Justiciar? Justiciar. I would say Justicar, but there's an I in there. Justiciar. Let's speak with this guy.
Hello.
What can I do for you? You seem to be... I don't know that he seems to be on edge, but I guess our character does, so... You seem to be on edge. What's the problem? Thousands of them, truth be told. We got refugees coming in from all parts under some misguided notion that things are actually better here, that the legacy somehow passed us over. So they show up with no prospects and little money and just end up making a worse mess of things. He looks you up and down. No offense. What can you tell me about Defiance Bay? Sorry, but I don't have time right now, but it sounds like that Dozens crackpot, Rowan, is stirring up trouble again. He jerks his head at the gate. He'd be all too happy to give you a rundown of the city, liberally flavored with Dozens propaganda, of course. What's Dozens? Dozens? Oh, maybe it's Dozens. I'm looking for the Temple of Wotica. He scratches his beard. Not sure why you'd want to go there. Huh. It's in the first fires if you really want to see it. What's the first fires? Okay. He grunts. And good luck to you. Alright. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 places to go within the city. There's the first fires, I get it. Copper Lane, Heritage Hill, Brackenbury, Andra's Gift, and First Fires. This town does remind me, just its look and everything, reminds me a bit of Baldur's Gate. It will take you 15 minutes to complete your journey. Yes, we'll do that. Wielding a single one-handed melee weapon with no shield confers an accuracy bonus to every attack.
Defiance Bay, the city at the heart of the Deerwoods Revolution, now seems on the brink of another. Refugees line the streets, homeless and hungry, displaced by Whiterun's legacy, hoping for relief within the city walls, and finding none. Dissidents congregate to protest and to heckle, calling for an end to animancy and the ouster of their duke. The city's militiamen cast fearful looks as they patrol the streets, their hands trembling at the hilts of their weapons. The capital of a country that had not long ago incinerated a god now appears to be a spark away from sharing the deity's fate.
Okay, cool. So Act 1 completed, it said. Things are not going well here, it seems. Hi, kitty. No?
Defiance Bay. If ever there was a dry field in need of a cleansing flame, you have found it.
Okay.
Well met,
There's
friend.
Rowan. Rowan's arms are crossed and his mouth is set in a grim frown as he watches the gathered protesters. He looks ready for a fight. He sizes you up. New in town, eh? You picked an interesting time to visit Defiance Bay. All these refugees fleeing the frontier and finding the legacy no better here. It's the Animancers, Magrid scorch 'em, and they nested the city like rats. You mark my words, though. Us dozens are gonna put a stop to it. I don't know if that's how to pronounce it, or dozens, maybe. I'd like to know more about Defiance Bay. This is the capital of the Free Palatinate of the Deerwood. We started out as the capital of an Ederan colony, but we booted the Flaccid Scepter from these lands 150 years ago. These days we're a major port receiving trade and visitors from all over the world, but we, well some of us anyway, strive to hold on to the pioneering spirit that earned us our freedom a century and a half ago. The city is divided into 5 districts: Copper Lane, First Fires, Andra's Gift, Brackenbury, and Heritage Hill. He ticks off each one on a calloused finger. Okay, tell me about Copper Lane. This here's Copper Lane. He taps a scuffed boot on the cobblestones. It's primarily a market district, but you've also got the Expedition Hall directly north of here, where you could join treks into the wild. That's also where my fellow dozens martyrs, and I tend to meet up with other concerned citizens. He points to a long domed building west and north of your position, and that's the Hall of the Revealed Mysteries. Eerie place, you ask me, but they got the biggest library in the Deerwood. Kana laughs. Ha! Eerie indeed. It might be less so if more kith stepped inside. Perhaps we ought to visit Halcyon Rain and see just what mysteries are revealed. Tell me about Brackenbury. A noise of disgust rattles in his throat. Ugh. The nobility that didn't sail back to Edir stayed there. Most of the families there trace their lineage back to old imperial times. Other than a lot of has-been nobility, you got Hadrit House, where Lady Webb and her spies operate, and Brackenbury Sanitarium, the main cesspit of animancy in the city. He spits on the cobblestones. Puh. Tell me about the First Fires. That's where the revolution started, hence the name. These days it's overrun with politicians and panderers, but we'll take it back someday. That's where you'll find the Ducal Palace, the Valian Embassy, and Crucible Keep. He shakes his head. The Crucible Knights were the original freedom fighters in Defiance Bay, but now they're just strutting peacocks with their eyes on fancy titles and their heads up their asses. There's an old temple of Wodica there, too. We keep it real nice for her. He winks. Andra's gift. Oops. I accidentally clicked a button on my mouse, so I talked to him about Copper Lane. Andra's gift. Got the name because it's a wetland that was drained back in the Imperial days. Now it's a seedy district populated by sailors, common folk, and more than a few thugs. But it's a fun place, too, if you know where to look. He winks and elbows you. Look for a place called the Salty Mast when you're there. Other than that, it's mostly warehouses and abandoned homes. Did we ask about Brackenbury? Yeah, I'm pretty sure we did. Tell me about Heritage Hill. He shivers. Ugh. Used to be one of the more prestigious districts in the city. Heroes of the Revolution claimed plots up there next to an ancient Anguithan tower and the city cemetery. Had the best views in Defiance Bay. Attracts richer types these days. Lot of animancy patrons. Puh! He glances at the crowd and lowers his voice. You wouldn't have heard, but something happened over there a couple months ago. The authorities sealed it off and they're keeping their mouths shut. But mark my words, animancy's to blame. Never mind, let's talk about something else. Tell me about the Dozens. He taps his chest. We're an organization of interested citizens who want to free Defiance Bay from the dangerous influence of animancers and the tyranny of the aristocrats who support them. We also consider ourselves a militia of sorts, seeing as the Crucible Knights are little more than a flock of preening nobles in training these days. Just like a militia, the Dozens, except for the training and the discipline and the code of honor. His eyes gleam. And we're always looking to expand. The more people see things our way, the better the state of our country, or of the country. You have any interest in hearing more? Stop by Admus Den sometime, the expedition hall. A lot of free thinkers in there. Can set straight all the nonsense the nobles and the animancers want you to believe. Might even be paid to work there for motivated types. What are you doing out here? He gestures at the crowd, which buzzes with angry chatter. Trying to get the folk to see reason. We're in the midst of a crisis, and instead of purging the nefarious forces from our city, the Duke is granting animancers dangerous liberties. What do you know about animancy? It's the study and manipulation of essence, which any sane person will tell you is the purview of the gods. The Adirans, at least, had the sense to outlaw it, which is the only good thing you could say about them. It's not like magic chanting or the soul readings those ciphers do. It's been around since ancient Anguithan times, which is why you'll see animancers tinkering with old Anguithan artifacts. Kana raises a fist to cough discreetly into it. Half-truths all, but he's an enthusiastic performer. I'll give him that. He shakes his head, so I guess he said that under his breath, or to us at the side, so Rowan wouldn't hear it. He shakes his head. Trouble is, the animancers got no idea what half those artifacts actually do. Not that they'll admit it. Our empathic friend is correct about one thing, at least. Farewell.
Hey.
Well, let's see if we have anything to talk to our companions about. Yeah, no.
What's on your mind?
I don't think we do, so we'll continue. Oh, I guess they get a little symbol, I think, on their character picture there. Alright. Marketplace, Admus Den, Pernisk's house, world map, Lumdala's house, Scrivener's dormitory, First Fires, the Hall of Revealed Mysteries, Catacombs, and Brackenbury. Well, let's take a little wander around. I'm going to zoom out a bit while we're in the city here. I'd like to see the combat from closer up, but we can see further like this. Let's take a little wander around. We'll take Kana to that library. What does this have to say? The calm waters smell faintly of refuse. Ew. I mean, of course, though. What's this? The Goose and Fox. Melee engagement makes it difficult for characters to move away from defenders in melee. However, something can be done about that. A patron and an actress. Bishop. Makes me think of X-Men. This Stalgar's pelt is thick with dust and moss. The plaque below the beast reads Maiden Falls, 2682. Let's check this out. Errol of Levi looks on enigmatically from the canvas. Let's check out this guy's story. You see a half-consumed ale slosh its way across the distance to his mouth, spilling across the stains of food long past. Glazed eyes glance at the brawl across the room, gaining fervor as the fight extends through the room. Another ale, he murmurs to the bartender, downing his drink and turning towards the wall. He pulls a picture from his pocket, a painting of a young child, all brown hair and green eyes, and holds it above a candle. It does not burn. Ales later, he begins to sing. The bar, a mess of broken chairs and wounded pride, and they all listen for a moment before continuing their drinks. Zvef, conversations. His ache is felt through the room. His sad story reminds them of their sad stories. When he finishes singing, a silence hangs in the air, palpable among the smoke and the sweat and the yeasty smell of beer-infused exhalation. He is the first to break the silence, ordering a round of ale for the room. The general din of conversation sparks and resumes, but the mirth now is tampered with far-off memories and thoughts. Got 3 more here. Oh, that guy's name was Roy Ningwin. This is Arishti Tungsten? You see a fire burning slowly on the side of a winding road, unmanned. There seems to be no fuel, no wood or oil for it to consume, no hay or twigs. Despite this, it roars, crackles, and wails in the wind. It takes you a moment, but you begin to notice a figure in the flames. Its shaking hands cradle a young face, molted red tears marring skin the color of coal. The boy cowers, flame coating him as he holds his knees to his chest. In the distance, a man approaches, faceless. He extends a hand to the frightened child, who considers it warily before taking it. The flames die down, leaving his limbs and settling on his head like obedient pets. All tears dried, they walk together, fire and death, hand in hand. As you near, you feel a vibrant oh, right, we've read that before. Let's reach out to the soul. You see a wizard. This guy's name is Mycorus Solamatine? You see a wizard playing illusions in a town square, fingers plucking color and sound from the air and weaving scenes of beauty and fright. A crowd of onlookers gasps and cheers, enthralled with the display, all but one boy standing off to the side, mouth agape. Green eyes are pale with wonder, vision after vision playing out before him, and something inside the boy clicks. Without warning, he bolts, disappearing into the crowd, pushing and shoving desperately. The mage finishes his show soon after, a giant silver dragon descending through the crowd and 1,000 stars exploding into nothingness. Collecting coins, he walks around the clapping crowd, bowing and nodding at each as he passes, until a small sack is dropped into his hands. The boy, standing for a moment before him, small and still, and begs the wizard to apprentice him. He glances at the hefty bag, weighing it, and the boy, carefully. Finally, he nods and flicks gently at the bag, which disappears. The boy grins. "How'd you do that?" he asks, but the illusionist merely winks. The thing about the dragon reminds me of Gandalf's fireworks. The Vulture. You see a hand, curled and bruised, staked to the floor with a bent metal spike. Blood covers the floor and drips from the furnishings and walls. This man looks up from the body he is crouched over to survey the carnage he caused to the family in whose house he now skulks. 4 bodies total, a woman, 2 young men and a girl lie blindfolded on the ground. Their legs are bound and both hands are attached to the floor with spikes. He has lifted the woman's blindfold and is currently doing something to her eyes. She pulls back a small blade and covers the eyes. He pulls back a small blade and covers the eyes again, gently patting the blindfold. He stands and looks around, seemingly satisfied with his handiwork. Suddenly his breath quickens, hearing someone approaching the door to the room. He bounces in place, excitement almost overwhelming him. Then he rushes back to the back of the room, concealing himself in the shadows. From his vantage, he sees the bodies are perfectly arranged, each one facing the door, welcoming the man of the house back, arms outstretched as if in embrace. The door opens as he slowly pulls another spike from his belt, the tip of his tongue playing across his teeth in anticipation. Wow, what a monster. Sounds like a bit of a serial killer. Unless he was exacting some type of revenge, and even if he was, what an asshole. Let's check this painting out. The dragon is outlined in charcoal pencil. The thick, jagged lines and the faint smell of sulfur suggest that the artist completed his sketch in a hurry. Cliff Dragon, White March, 2685. Let's take a little peek in here, what I assume is the kitchen. It's a pantry of sorts. We're not going to rob their pantry. Brad Furris. Furris? Let's check out this guy's story. You see a mud-soaked clearing, rain falling to the ground in large drops. This man is lying on his back in the muck, his hands holding open the maw of an enormous Stalgar that stands over him, its front paws on his chest. The heavy rain falls over them, playing counterpoint to the grunts made by the opponents. Dead Stalgar litter the ground around them, and the man's body shows signs of a difficult battle. His clothing is torn, hanging in scraps in some places. Bites and scratches cover his arms and legs. A huge gash cuts across his forehead. Blood and water mixing as they run down his face and drip into the mud. It takes all the man's effort to keep the beast's jaws from clamping down. The man looks around wildly until his gaze finally lands on a large axe lying barely within the arm's reach behind his head, the rain slowly covering it with grime and muddy water. He looks at the Stalgar and then back at his axe, grim determination on his face. His arms are shaking and it seems he will not be able to hold the beast back for much longer. He takes a deep breath and wraps his right hand around the Stalgar's bottom jaw, then lets go with his left hand, freeing the top of its head. The Stalgar's mouth snaps shut on his right hand as the left shoots out above his head and grabs the handle of his axe. The Stalgar grinds its teeth and pulls back, trying to free itself from his grip, blood dripping from its mouth onto his face. With a grunt that quickly becomes a bellow of pain, the man pulls his right hand down, bringing the beast's head closer to him, swinging the axe around as he does. The blade of the weapon pierces the Stalgar's neck, and it yelps, its mouth popping open as it tries to step backward off the man. Before his mangled hand can lose its grip, the man pulls and twists as hard as he can, trying to get the beast on the ground. Using the Stalgar's resistance to pull himself into a sitting position, he brings the axe down again on its neck, and again, and one final time as its head and his hand simultaneously come free. The head flies from his grip as he thrusts his hand behind his back to embrace himself as he falls. As his hand hits the ground and his full weight lands on it, a second bellow of pain erupts from his mouth. Breathing heavily, he brings his now mangled hand up to assess the damage. The little finger is gone, lost somewhere in the mud. The 2 fingers next to it are twisted, broken, and torn, barely attached to his hand by small bits of flesh. He sighs, grabbing both dangling fingers with his left hand. He grits his teeth and pulls.
Hey.
Huh. Quite the battle that man had. A merchant and an actor. Hate to say it, but the legacy's been good for business. You've come to talk some sense into this fellow, I hope. No, I haven't. A dwarf and an Orlan debate philosophy on the other side of this curtain, or of the curtain. A mercenary. It's a good place to unwind between jobs. Sometimes I even find new ones. Oh, we didn't read this guy's story. Lupites Silvarum. Oh, right, we already read this before. We'll just reach out to the soul. You see an impressive gathering of wild Orlands in ceremonial dress, shaded by a copse of ancient oaks. Underneath the largest oak stand 2 young Orlands, hands clasped, eyes clear as they promise to care for and love one another in the joining of their clans. An older Orland steps towards them to speak, beard seeming to sprout directly underneath his eyes, and declares their union complete. The jubilant Orland clans carry the newly wedded couple away to their tents with snorts of laughter and crude jokes, leaving the older Orland to sit alone beneath the age-old oak. He sighs, observing the scene in the distance. He whispers a quiet benediction, glad for their gladness, and melts into the trees without another word. He has seen enough happiness for one day. So, do we have anyone to talk to? Kainra? A woman sits by herself, spinning something on the table in front of her and watching it with furious intensity. It's about the size of a coin, and it wobbles over a crack in the wood with a metallic rattle. She snatches it up with one hand and slams a half-empty cup down on the table with the other. This is not a good time. You look like you could use another drink. I'll get there. She takes a long drink from her glass, just trying to calm down. Tried to talk myself out of something foolish. Something foolish? She says nothing for a few moments, as if hoping you'll leave. At last, Kainra looks up at you, and lamplight falls across her face. A purpling bruise is blossoming along her cheekbone. There's something I need to give to my fiancé, Pernisk, only he doesn't seem to go anywhere without his new friends, and they're not exactly pleasant company. Who hit you? She shakes her head. I know how this looks, but you don't understand. It's not like Pernisk. It's these new friends of his. They brought out the worst in him. Tell me about these new friends. They come into our house with their dead eyes and their black teeth. I'm not a fool. I know what it means. Pernisk makes me leave when they show up, but it's obvious that what they come to do. Last time they came, I told them to get out. Let them have their fun somewhere else in the gift. Gift? But not under my roof. She scowls, and then winces, her fingertips gently probing her bruise. Svef changes you, I guess. I guess Svef is a drug. The Pernisk I knew wouldn't have squashed a spider. I never thought he'd... She trails off, still feeling the swollen, discolored flesh. But Svef makes people calm and listless. It shouldn't make them violent. Kainra shrugs. I don't really know. Seems better than believing he's always been this way. Maybe I could go talk to him. Her hands rest on the table and she clenches it into a white-knuckled fist. There's nothing more to say to him. We're finished. I just want to give this back to him and have a clean break. She opens her hand and a ring clatters onto the table. It was his grandmother's. Even after this, I don't have the heart to sell it off, but if I go back there myself, I know what'll happen. I lose my temper, and I'll probably wind up with another one of these. She points to her bruise. I wouldn't normally hand this off to a stranger, but people say you've got a good heart. If you give this back to him, he'll know we're done. So people talk about me, Halcyon Rain, because she's referring to me having a good heart. I'll take this ring to Pernisk, then. She looks at you and nods. The house is just north of here. Please don't hurt him. As furious as I am, I don't want that on my conscience. I don't like men who beat up on women. Or their partners. I mean, if you're a mixed martial artist, or martial artists in general, and you're sparring, or... that's a different thing, but people who pick on other people in general bothers me. Bishop. The man behind the bar is nearly the size of an Aumau. A handle protrudes from his back, and his face is set in a stoic frown. He gives you a small nod. A handle? Here's for a drink. There's a tiny pewter cup in front of him. He turns it in one broad hand, but doesn't drink from it. Tell me about yourself. Name's Bishop. Used to be a scholar of Barath. Now I run the Goose and Fox and keep the regulars in line. He shifts, and you see a warhammer strapped to his back. What more is there to tell? How'd you go from religion to taverns? The journey isn't as long as you'd think. It started with Hollowborn, and with this, he takes a black bottle from under the bar and fills the pewter cup. It was my sister's son. He takes a drink. At the beginning of Widewind's legacy, he was one of the first. I never expected there would be so many after him. Tragedy is part of the cycle, but it's followed by rebirth. Yet every year, more parents were grieving for their Hollowborn children, and the gods were silent. Yeah, that's tough, man. He leans forward, crossing his arms on the bar. Barath promises rebirth, cycles, but the only cycle I found was this one. He taps the bar. Have a drink, have another, and another until I couldn't remember how I got home. Wake up, come back. I finally woke up one day to see my family had packed up and left. For all I know, they'd left days before and I just hadn't noticed. But they were gone. So, I came here. I've cleaned up since then. Not that I've found many answers. He tosses the cup back. I've just stopped asking questions. This is a lively place. It was founded in the early days of Deerwooden independence by a traveling scholar named Errol of Levi. He wanted a place where kith of all backgrounds could gather and hash out the issues facing their new country. He rests his elbow on the polished wood of the bar. It didn't take long for the place to fill up. Brackenbury aristocrats argued with dock workers from the gift, while soldiers wrangled with politicians. Deerwoodens have never been known to turn down an argument. He takes a sip from a tiny cup. What happened next? Soon, kith were coming from the farms and settlements, too. He waves at the door as if expecting a crowd to bustle in. This place got even more popular with the Valian sailors than the Salty Mast, and that was the problem. He drains his cup. No matter what people say about fair-mindedness and civil debate, there's only so much people will tolerate. Errol found himself on the wrong side of an argument with the wrong Thane, and when he disappeared a few days later, some said it was the work of that Thane. He shrugs, spreading his hands over the bar as he surveys the room. But Errol knew which way the wind was blowing. If you ask me, he skipped town, hid out somewhere, hoping for rational minds to prevail in Defiance Bay. He cracks a wry grin. If only he could see it now. Could I get a room? I'll show you what I got. The writing is just awesome in this. Merchant's Stay. Lasts for 2 rests, Perception and Resolve. Vixen's Burrow. Dexterity, Survival, and Defense when disengaging. That's a pretty good one. Fletcher's Stay. Athletics, Mechanics, and Ranged Accuracy. That's pretty good too. Suite of Worldly Wonders. +1 Intellect and +2 Lore. Or the Common Room. Let's go for the Fletcher's Stay.
Hey.
Alright. Well, I think we checked that place pretty thoroughly. Let's see about talking to Pernisk. That was his name, right? The man who seems to be doing drugs and chasing off his fiancée. All seems a little weird to me, but...
Adair, you have said you fought in the Saints' War, but for which side?
The one that blew up my god.
I didn't mean anything by it. I imagine a man with a head made of fire and light could be very convincing.
Funny thing about Deerwoodens. With all that fire and light, they just treated him like another authority figure. Hey.
He's got something to say. Let's talk to Adair.
The dozens. Pretty sure you won't find one among them who stood within 100 miles of that bridge when the Godhammer went off. Too bad, too. Assumed there'd be less of them.
He shakes his head with a bitter smile. What do you have against the dozens? Nothing serious. Nothing I don't have against a lot of folks, anyway. The dozens, they like to take things into their own hands. It gets ugly sometimes. We don't have them in Gilded Vale, but they'd be right at home there. They picked that name so they could do what they wanted and feel like it was right. Got nothing to do with honor or sacrifice. They like to invoke Magrin, too, when they especially want to feel right. Somehow, I don't think she'd be too impressed with that lot. I'm sure she'd like to set him on fire any time they use her name, but the gods probably got rules against that kind of thing. People hide behind symbols so that they can't be questioned. The Dukes are a reasonable man. Maybe while we're in Defiance Bay we could get him to force people to call themselves what they are. Don't imagine they have as many members if they call themselves the loudmouth sheepfuckers. Oh, good one. Good one, dear. Why do they call themselves the Dozens? Was 12 Deerwoodens stood against Halgut Citadel waiting for Wadewind to come across the bridge there. They had to hold him there until long enough for the Godhammer to detonate, so that's what they did. Godhammer? Well, we already know what it is, but we'll ask him. That's what they called the bomb they blew up Wadewind with. Don't know much about it other than that. Anything kills a living god, guess you gotta name it. Well, let's continue on. Good idea.
Hey.
Huh. So, I saw Pernisk's house. Yeah, there it is. I'm gonna save. And I guess we'll head to Pernisk's before we explore too much more. Who's this? Heritage Hill claims another curious soul. We remind all visitors to Defiance Bay that the hill is sealed for the city's protection. And furthermore, that the trade of Anguithan artifacts is strictly forbidden. Yeah, I was gonna say, he seems like a town crier. He is. Broken Branch. Let's check out her soul. You see a dark figure moving quickly around a room, grabbing items and placing them in a sack. The room is in complete disarray. This elf is lying on the floor in the middle of the room. Her breath comes in shallow, hitching gasps, and her face is wet with tears. Her head slowly tilts to the side, her attention drawn to the noise on the far side of the room. She watches the figure move about, removing all the valuables from a chest. She slowly lifts her hand from her stomach, bringing them in front of her face. Her head shakes weakly as she turns it back to look at her fingers covered in her own blood. Her breath hitches again, and she lets out a quiet mewling sound. The dark figure stops its search and turns to look at her, hisses something at her. The figure walks back to the elf and stands over her, tilting its head as if it had completely forgotten she was there until she made the sound. He kneels next to her, stares at her unfocused eyes, and reaches out a hand to her stomach. Without a word, and without breaking his gaze, he pushes two of his fingers into the gaping wound in her abdomen. Her mouth widens in a silent scream, a rictus of pain etched on her face. In a moment, her entire body goes limp as she succumbs to the pain and faints. The figure stands, staring at her one final time, and then spits on her before turning to leave. Wow.
Hey.
Terrible. So this is Pernisk's house, I believe. It is. Well, we'll end the episode here. Until next time, if you enjoyed it, please leave me a like, subscribe if you want to see more, and leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought. This is FatherofTwo, signing off.